setting the first lines for COP28. It is called On the Road to UNFCCC COP28, Advances for Agriculture in the Negotiations. We will have two speakers today in this first meeting.
Coordinando en conjunto con
The idea is to continue to coordinate together with our other partners. We, the Innovation Center, the Executive Secretariat of the Central American Agricultural Council. Without further ado, I will offer the floor to our Deputy Director, Mr. Lloyd Day, to please give us some welcoming remarks. Go ahead, Don Lloyd.
Well, thank you very much, Katia, Director General Manuel Otero, Dr. Walter Oyarzabal, Dr. Carlos Ruiz, Dr. Ricardo Montrero, Dr. Federico Villarreal, distinguished participants from ICA member states. Good morning, good afternoon to Carlos, and welcome to this webinar sponsored by ICA, the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub, and the Secretariat of the Central American Council on Agriculture. This is an open meeting for all of our member states and other stakeholders to discuss the road to the COP28 and take stock of the Sharm el-Sheikh Joint Work Program and the upcoming opportunities for the agricultural sector of the Americas to participate in the convention's work. We at ICA are very pleased with the strong member state participation on the road to and at the COP27 in Egypt. One of our member states delegates told me that this was the strongest, most active, most informed participation yet from our region. So congratulations to everyone who was a part of that. This is very important as the discussions regarding climate change are perhaps the most important international discussions of our lifetime and set the stage for what happens not just for the rest of our lives, but for those of our children, our grandchildren, and future generations. We must acknowledge that heretofore, agriculture has not been a powerful voice in these discussions. But we are now being heard, and yes, we are now at the table with a much more assertive presence. In 2021, the United Nations hosted the UN Food Systems Summit to discuss the transformation of food systems, mostly with a focus on how to reduce its impact on the environment throughout the food chain. ICA member states were very active in these discussions to ensure that the narrative would include three important principles. First, that farmers must be at the table and recognized as a fundamental and vital part of any discussion on food systems transformation. Second, that science, not ideology, must be the foundation of any public policy. And third, that agriculture must be viewed as part of the solution to our climate challenges. Not a day goes by that I do not learn about some new innovation to reduce emissions, to reduce the use of inputs and of water and land, of new technologies that have the potential to transform the way we produce to make agriculture more resilient and more climate friendly. We live in a time of incredible innovation in agriculture, and it's really exciting. And that's going to have an impact on our climate and is going to change the way we produce. So agriculture is part of the solution. And that fundamental point became the impetus for the ministers of agriculture of the Americas to deliver a joint statement for the COP27 discussions in Egypt. It also led ICA, along with our member states and the farmers, ranchers, and industries involved in food and agriculture across the Americas, to host a pavilion in Sharm el-Sheikh. It was called the Home of Sustainable Agriculture of the Americas. And quite frankly, it was the home for agriculture from around the world at the COP27. We are in the process of preparing to do this again in Dubai with the intention of making it even bigger and better, and with the participation of more member state ministers, farmers, industry associations, companies, and NGOs involved in agriculture and the environment. We look forward to the participation of all of you on this call, and we thank you for your strong support for our place in both in the negotiations at the COP28 and at the Home of Sustainable Agriculture of the Americas in Dubai. Thank you to our partners, and I look forward to listening in to the rest of this discussion by the presenters that we have for you today. Thanks very much and have a good rest of the day.
Muchas gracias, subdirector, por estas palabras de
Thank
bienvenida.
you, Deputy Director, for your welcoming remarks. Let us begin with the agenda for the morning. The first speaker will be Dr. Walter Oyanzabal. He works in climate change and sustainability. He has been working in Uruguay as coordinator of the unit on the sustainability unit of the Ministry of Agriculture, as well as internationally in some spaces of the Framework Convention. So without further ado, I offer the floor to Don Walter for him to refer to the current status of agriculture in global negotiations. Welcome and thank you. Thank you, Katia. Good day, good morning, good afternoon to everyone following this transmission. I will try to give you a general overview of the evolution of how agriculture has been addressed within the climate change negotiations. I hope I have shared the screen appropriately so that you can all see it. Allow me to begin then. With some slides that may be of help. Well, the contents of the presentation basically will focus on seeing what the process has been like, how matters related to agriculture have been addressed. We will see a bit of the background when agriculture started to be discussed and what position it is in today and what the outlook is for the medium and short and long term based on the decision made at COP27 in Egypt to continue working on these matters. Of course, that when we talk about agriculture, climate change, and food security, we have a very broad context because we are recognizing that agriculture and climate change and food security are intimately connected. Some images on this screen here show clearly the impacts of extreme events, for example, on land productivity and food supply, and extreme flooding or extreme drought or hurricanes, and all of these generate significant damage. And if these extreme events continue to grow, because we as humanity have not tried to mitigate them as appropriate, we will be in very complex scenarios. The IPPC met recently in Geneva, giving the political approval by the countries to a summary document. And one of the main authors highlighted that at the current pace of greenhouse gases, the world will use all its remaining carbon budget to limit the increase of global temperature at no more than 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2030. That is just 6.5 years away, please. We will have depleted all our savings in carbon. So anything after 2030 will take us to higher temperatures, even temperatures that could exceed 2 degrees C or even more than 3. And that heating threshold of 1.5 degrees has been specifically highlighted by the scientific community as a critical point after which damage or climate-related damage will be very, very significant, and climate damage on ecosystems and agriculture and food security will become very critical and basically irreversible. Two of the authors of the 2023 report say that consequences of global warming have been deep enough, 1.1 degrees C. And with 1.5, it will be worse. And at 2 degrees, it will be even worse. So this mentions that the tenths of a degree are very important. And needless to mention, whole degrees. We may think, oh, that 1/10, oh, it's not much, or 1 degree is not all that much. No, but the impact of that on destabilizing circulation in the atmosphere and the connection between atmosphere and ocean and continents will be very severe. The most vulnerable people on the planet are mostly in developing nations and have contributed very little to the greenhouse gas emissions, but have been disproportionately affected by climate change. So Hotso and Howden say that it is likely that a child that is born right now will suffer many more extreme climate events than their grandparents did. So this is the report. It was subject to extensive discussion, political debate, many sleepless nights of scientists and different delegates, but it was finally approved and it will soon be published on the IPCC website. And this is a synthesis report. But that is not the subject matter today. Today, we are in a context where we need to work very hard both on mitigation as well as the causes of climate change, reducing emissions and increasing sequestration, but at the same time, in the same measure, giving great importance to adaptation to climate change, to building more resilient systems, because these are and will be in the future more subject to stronger and stronger pressure due to climate change. So, if we had to summarize and say, okay, what is the origin and where is agriculture headed to within the convention, we could say that there are basically 3 phases. One that we could call prior to the creation of the Coronavia joint work, which occurred between 2011 and 2016, those 5 years. After that, when the joint work of Coronavia took place, and as well as the implementation of a roadmap with different activities covering 2017 through 2022. And now, based on that prior work, in Sharm el-Sheikh, during COP27, a 4-year program was created focused on implementing the results of Coronavia to facilitate or for the countries to increase their climate action through different implementation methods provided by the convention and other levels to improve mitigation and adaptation, which is vital for food security. Now, agriculture is the only sector that has its own agenda, or its unique point on the agenda. And this is basically matters related to agriculture. Working with agriculture has different dimensions as would be expected. So the work that started in 2011 aims at focusing on those matters related to agriculture. And if we see the Convention on Climate Change as a whole, and we see it as a whole ecosystem, we will see the figure to the left. All it does is show the complexity of the institutional structure and the different roles that have been created. And to the right, on the right-hand side, you can see 4 financial entities that are part of the convention, financial entities, and they provide funds to the different countries. But what Coronavia was very clear about through the different workshops with the participation of experts and representatives from different countries, as well as representatives from all this ecosystem, this group of institutions, is that institutional structure is highly disconnected in working with agriculture. And aside from agriculture, agriculture has received less attention than it deserves. And this was recognized during the Coronavia work. And that is why there is a need to overcome that gap of disconnect. And we should give agriculture the attention it deserves. And those are the challenges for the program approved in Egypt last year. The Paris Agreement does not have a sectoral approach. The Paris Agreement is for all sectors, and there are no specific sectors, and countries through their national contributions, their NDCs, are those that define up to what point the different sectors of the different countries participate in the nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. Although there are no sectoral approaches, it is important to remember that the preamble of the agreement recognizes the fundamental priority of safeguarding food security and put an end to hunger and the particular vulnerability of production systems to adverse effects of climate change. We all know that agriculture depends on climate compared to other activities. If we see the software producers, they would be less affected by what happens with climate, but agriculture is extremely dependent. So to have an item on the agenda as that created in 2011 at a COP in South Africa and keep that alive and make it relevant in its impacts, this is central. And also, this is connected because it contributes so that countries within the Paris Agreement, which is the document of the convention, can make better nationally determined contributions and have access to others.
Tenemos que recordar que el Acuerdo de París no solo se trata de como objetivo de mantener la temperatura.
So the Paris Agreement doesn't only have the objective of keeping the temperature below 2 degrees Celsius and making efforts to even limiting it to 1.5 degrees Celsius, but acknowledging that this would considerably reduce the risk and the effects of climate change. But we also need to, as the objectives state, increase our capacity for adaptation in a way that it does not threaten food production. So this requires financial flows, but these should be coherent with a road towards low emission of greenhouse gases. But let's take a look at the agricultural process. Everything began in 2011 at COP17 in Durban, South Africa. And if we look at decision number 2, there's a paragraph 75, and it requests the SABSTA to consider issues related to agriculture during its period session during the 36th paragraph. So during the Conference of the Parties in 2012, the COP18, a decision was adopted regarding this. So everything began, and urged the COP18 to adopt a decision. So it all began back in 2011 in Durban. And the idea was to include agriculture as a specific item in the agenda, which does not exist for industry or trade or any other area of the economy. So afterwards, in 2015 and 2011, 4 workshops on very important items dealing with agriculture had to do with risk assessment, contingency plans, and evaluation of risk, vulnerability of agrosystems, practices and technologies for an increased sustainability in agricultural activities. Now, during The rest of 2016-2017 negotiations continued. They were not easy as to how to continue to address agriculture. It was difficult. But finally, during COP17, which is COP23, a decision was reached. And this is a great achievement. So the joint, so Cornuvia occurred. And Cornuvia is the agricultural experimental station in Fiji, and that is why this was baptized as such. The two subsidiary bodies of the convention. So this is an advisory body of the Cornuvia Joint Working Group, and that is where Cornuvia arose. So it was based on a proposal presented by Uruguay. So, and this proposal it destabilized negotiations, and we attained a result that's known as a movement or a motion. So the Cornuvia decision is what? It states that the COP requested two subsidiary bodies to address jointly problems related to agriculture. So through workshops, experts meetings, working with bodies, convention bodies, and taking into account the vulnerabilities of agriculture and climate change, and focus on that. And this is very relevant because it provided a significant meaning to the scientific work of SAPSTA that had been ongoing. It maintained sectoral sectoral approximation, and it focused on the implementation on different items having to do with the communities and growers. And Cornuvia also allowed more rapprochement with framework, with the Framework Convention, with the different aspects of for example, the Global Green Climate Fund, the Technology Center, the UNFCCC, the Adaptation Committee, the Nairobi program, etc., for adaptation. So there's a whole gamut of different stakeholders. And it's not only, doesn't only go inwards, but also outwards in that direction. So there are also, the convention allows it allows observers, the FAO, ICA, for example, and coordinating with relevant institutions on that matter. So a series of 7 workshops were held. And let me just mention the most significant. For example, methods to implement results of prior workshops, methods and focus for assessment of adaptation, collateral benefits, adaptation and resilience, improvement of carbon in the soil, health of the soil, fertility, and better use of nutrients, better cattle raising systems, socioeconomic dimensions of food security, and intersessional workshops on sustainable management of land and water. So this was from 2018 to 2022 during the period of sessions. So then they asked themselves, how do we implement or impact implementation rather? And the debate was resolved last year at COP27, and a decision was approved to continue the joint work on agriculture. And this was called the Sharm el-Sheikh Joint Work Group, which is the vacation area in Egypt where the conference was held. So what does the decision state? It says plenty. It just says that it is glad to take stock of all of the recommendations and the progress that has been made since Cornevia. It acknowledges that the workshops have made headway on national circumstances, needs, the needs of the producers. And it also looks at how to mobilize climate action, among others. In paragraph 14, the COP attributed a mandate for these two subsidiary bodies, which are the two broad pillars on which is the basis of the convention. And it asked the SABSA, the implementation body, to establish Sharm el Sheikh, to establish a joint work every 4 years on Sharm el Sheikh on implementation regarding the importance of climate action and for agriculture and food security. And it also looked at the action plan of Cornevia, and very ambitious plan. It was a very ambitious plan. One is providing a holistic focus on food security and agriculture so that it could be addressed. It's a quadrennial program, so it had to last 4 years, the interpreter clarifies. And it has to acknowledge that adaptation is a priority, especially for the most vulnerable. Increase coherence, synergies, and coordination and communication among the parties, the countries, the constituted bodies, and financial mechanisms. We saw that during when the constituted bodies dialogued during Cornevia, a deficit of coordination was something that and alignments was something that led to loss of efficacy and efficiency when supporting the countries. So another objective is to promote synergies and coordination to implement climate action in the countries and contribute in agriculture and contribute to food security. Other constituted bodies and financial mechanisms, as well as technical recommendations. And so this program mandates that the COP receive advice or counseling and as well as financial support to improve coordination and to be given the intention and to lead to more efficacy. Intensifying the research and development is also something that was considered. Consolidating and disclosing information, knowledge, and experience. The importance of assessing progress to be able to address food security and agriculture, to exchange information and knowledge on policies and strategies to be executed. There is an enormous wealth of activities that are and experiences that are being that can be shared that are being done by different countries. And this is highly beneficial for establishing more efficient policies. The Secretariat was also requested, or support was requested of the Secretariat to prepare an annual synthesis report and hybrid workshops during the negotiation sessions that are 2 per year, generally in June and November or December. So topics will be identified that will be decided by the COP as well as on-site workshops. And a portal, an online portal was also decided to be established to share initiatives and projects. So as of now, In 4 days, the formal we'll have the formal expiration date for countries and accredited observers to send their opinions on the different elements that should comprise this joint Sharm el Sheikh joint work decision to achieve the ambitious objectives that were set forth for this program. It also requests that countries provide their opinions on how the portal should function and communicate programs, policies, and projects. So as of June 2023, the negotiators will be working to be able to arrive at an agreement on the details of the program, the makeup, and its operation for the set objectives set forth to be attained. So June negotiations will be vastly important. So the decision of COP27 sent a very strong message to other stakeholders such as FAO, the World Bank, and FIDA. These are about the importance of increasing the cooperation. And this has to do with food security, agriculture, and the measures that this decision should focus on. A summary and perspectives. The new program, the Sharm el Sheikh program, provides continuity on the agenda item on agriculture, as I had mentioned in COP 2011. So the agenda item has new content. It's refreshed, revitalized, and it's focused on the results of that period of Cornivia, which which led to much information, an aggregate of much information as a result of 7 workshops during 2013 to 2021. 3 important workshops were held to address how Sharm el Sheikh can help or facilitate implementation on the field. And ambitious objectives were established within a very short time frame. So the 4-year program, well, the first year, which is this one, will probably be taken up by making or deciding on as to how this program is going to be executed, but the how has not yet been defined. And the why is perhaps even more important. So it's going to be a very intense year for negotiation for countries to agree upon the best ways of executing this to have lasting effects. In May, June 2023, the countries will be able to share their points of view. It's important then for negotiators to start working now. Now remember, this information that is sent by the countries, different countries, is public, and they can enter the convention website and enter the agricultural section and find a repository where the different points of view that different countries have submitted are housed. And that way you can garner an idea as to what countries are doing to put this program, the Sharm el Sheikh decision, into practice. So countries are now preparing their documents, and countries also send their point of view. And it's essential to arrive at a decision in June, but during the COP, time is very limited. So June is when most of the agreements should be able to be arrived at. So by COP28 in Uruguay, the Sharm el Sheikh program will be operating fully. So when this 4-year cycle ends, the subsidiary bodies should inform the COP on the results of the program, the headway, the achievement or lack thereof. And we assume that as was the case with Cornevia, how working on food security and agriculture should be permanent items on the convention. So Cornevia had a roadmap, now Sharm el-Sheikh, but the agenda item that includes agriculture does not end. So the idea is to find how to continue. Since Sharm el-Sheikh is its success has to be permeated. So to close on my last concept, following up on the different stakeholders that work on agriculture and sustainability on the different aspects having to do with climate change, to follow up on the convention, which is a very open process.
If we enter the convention sites, we will follow the process and contribute all these opportunities to share views and become involved to see what the program generates and how it can be used in each of our countries. So it is fundamental to be part of this process, to feel part of this process. It is not that it's a matter of negotiators over there. No, this involves us all. And we must build together all the work to be done in agriculture and climate change. So with this, I thank you. And we may enter into a round of comments later on as appropriate. Thank you. Thank you, Don Walter, for your very clear explanation of the evolution of agriculture in the framework of negotiations, and to better understand the opportunities and how we are doing today, not only regarding the upcoming COP, but also other opportunities to continue with. We have a series of questions already, but let us take a bit of time. First, for the next speaker, Dr. Carlos Ruiz Garvia. He's a PhD in agriculture and has been part of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change for more than 12 years. His experience includes coordination of the work of the Regional Collaboration Centers, CCRs, for Latin America and the Caribbean, and under other actions, he has worked regarding the NDCs, carbon markets, cooperative and non-commercial approaches under Article 6, and climate action linked to innovation. So with this introduction, I am honored to offer the floor to Don Carlos for him to refer to the nationally determined contributions in carbon markets in agriculture. Don Carlos, the floor is yours. Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you, dear Katia. Could you confirm, please, that you can see my screen correctly? No, we see you. We do not see your presentation. At least not yet. Oh, I'm on slide number 1. No, I can see it clearly here. Well, let me confirm if others can see it.
No, aún no se ve.
No, we cannot see it yet. Allow me to. All right, here we go. Thank you. Now, fine, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Now you can see it then? Yes, now. So I can start off. Yes, sir, go ahead. Thank you, dear Katya. I would like to thank ICA and its Deputy Director Lloyd Day. Ricardo Montero is also here with us. Greetings to Kelly and all members of ICA and member nations. Walter also, excellent presentation, by the way. I am connected via BAN. As Katya was saying, I work at the Climate Change Secretariat in the Mitigation Division. It is a pleasure to be here with you once again, supporting the work of ICA and facilitating the implementation of the Paris Agreement in the different countries. It has been a pleasure to see how ICA's work through its members ended up with a pavilion at the COP. We have seen many pavilions and discussions about agriculture. As Walter said, this is not only fundamental for the climate agenda, but also to encourage and foster development. So in this context, when we received the invitation, we prepared this presentation to add or to give additional elements to those presented by Walter. My intention is not to repeat those elements regarding Coronavia and other matters related to agriculture, which Walter presented in great detail, but instead I would just like to add more regarding the evolution specifically of nationally determined contributions and some aspects related to facilitation and development of elements within Article 6. There are several elements that I will refer to, but I will focus particularly on Article 6 that relates to mechanisms. And at the end, I would like to take a few minutes in the presentation to refer to the Global Innovation Center, where we hope that agriculture plays a fundamental role. So this is a potpourri of topics, but I hope it may add to the information presented by Walter. It is very important to say that at the Secretariat, we have the responsibility of being very neutral. So in the negotiations, a process carried out by the parties, all of them as a whole are the ones that come to decisions. So all we do is facilitate the process as in the most neutral manner possible. My presentation will be divided in three parts. I will first, in the first part, refer to general aspects, but that are important for the group of agriculture to be aware of these. There is a synthesis report on the status of NDCs with some elements of agriculture that I would like to highlight, as well as the long-term strategies for Latin America and the Caribbean. Basically, Latin America and the Caribbean has taken up the leadership in this point, but there are some tools to accelerate climate action within the countries, helping to integrate other actors of society also. So that will be one of the components of the first part of my presentation. In part two, I will refer to Article 6 in greater detail, focusing on the mechanism as such and some aspects that are relevant for the types of removals. I will share some progress made by the Executive Board of Article 6.4. And lastly, I will refer to the Global Innovation Hub so that all countries and cities can facilitate the implementation of climate action and can use this space to amplify innovation, transforming innovation. I have been told that the Caribbean is connected. Well, so this For this reason, I will use the simultaneous interpretation system. I will speak in English from here on to take the messages to all the members that are following us. So I will now switch to speak in English.
I don't want to repeat what was mentioned by Walter before. He made a very good overview of the negotiation process and the interlinkages to the agriculture sector, but he also provided a quite good deal of summary of COP27. This took place last year, as you know, end of the year from 6 to 18 November in Sharm el-Sheikh. But maybe just to give you a flavor to those that were not participating, this was a major event. There were a large number of heads of states and governments that you see the level of commitments and also the importance of the agenda in terms of transforming our economies towards a decarbonized society. And also in terms of a number of participants, you could see that there was more than 35,000 participants from all over the world. It's 2 intense negotiating weeks. It's very important also to recognize the complexity of the different agenda items and topics, but there are ongoing efforts to trying to simplify and absorb these complexities through our, of course, website, but also through these sort of interactions. So we welcome the invitation by ICA to participate and share some of the elements. But most of the slides will contain some links so that you can follow up and identify what can be the key elements that you can take and capitalize on your day-to-day activities. I won't go into the details. Walter also touched on these things and these elements, but there's a new rooms article in our website that summarize the key outcomes. Loss and damage, as you know, was a breakthrough agreement that will provide an instrument to funding vulnerable countries that are the most affected by climate disasters. So there will be a important track of work operationalizing this instrument, and of course that includes the finance and some of the different elements to operationalize such an instrument and a mechanism. Another important aspect of the outcomes of the negotiation is the work on technology. As you know, the Technology Executive and the Climate Technology Center and Network, CTCN, both have been working on a joint work program to implement the climate technology mechanism, and this has been adopted, and it's a 5-year work program where also agriculture is featured. You will see that the outcomes of their meeting of the tech is taking place this week in Sondon in Korea, but FAO and other key partners are implementing some technology discussions and advancement also on how to facilitate the means of implementations under this chapter. In terms of mitigation, there has been a mitigation work program that includes a number of dialogues and engagements with decision makers that are aiming to urgently scaling up mitigation ambition and implementation. In some of the next slides, we will be talking about this. And of course, one of the key features moving forward to COP28 is the first global stocktake process, where there will be a reflection on the ongoing activities, but also forward-looking recommendations, what can be done after COP28. And you see that there has been some preparatory work, the website and the dialogues, technical dialogues prepared at COP27 and beyond to COP28 are also provided in the work program of the global stocktake. There are many other elements, but because this webinar is connected to agriculture, I'd like to refer to the work under Coronivia that Walter explained in detail, but there has been also other important announcements, particularly relating to the FAST initiative launched by the Egyptian presidents with a group of countries that might be also interesting for you to look at, and some of the links are provided in the slides. I won't go into the details, and again, we'll be complementing with other elements from the mitigation division. Maybe one of the key developments as well prior to COP27, but was also the basis for several of the discussions under the mitigation chapters, was this synthesis report that was preparing a response to the parties at COP26 in Glasgow to annually update the synthesis report on NDCs referred to in the decisions in Madrid. So what is important here is to understand that the NDCs, or the nationally determined contributions, are at the heart of the Paris Agreement, and these achievements in the long-term goals are very important, because this is how countries, according to their own individual capacities and circumstances, express their climate plans through the NDCs, and they embodied efforts, of course, by each country to reduce the national emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. So these documents are very important, and there are rounds of submission of these documents every 5 years. So the synthesis report helped to establish what are the global trends in terms of ambition, but also in terms of the plans beyond mitigation, also including some co-benefit and adaptation targets. So in this particular case, you can see that 160C latest available NDCs has been included in the 2022 NDC synthesis report, but this has a representation almost at a global level, and there has been a period since the previous synthesis report that is indicated on the screen. Important to mention that since the last period, 39 updated or new NDCs has been submitted by parties since the last synthesis report in 2021. Maybe some key findings on the report. It's important to recognize that countries and the systems are gaining experience. The quality of information in comparison to the previous round has improved. There are more elements, detailed elements in terms of the use of definitions. Some of the definitions are adopted by countries, so this quality has improved. There are important new elements connected to co-benefits of mitigation and adaptation. Also a section on how they connect to the NDCs and the SDGs agendas, and economic diversification in the list of actions that are proposed by countries. They have also a better alignment with the development goals, the SDG agenda, but also the strategies to carbon neutrality and other economic or planning activities and processes within the same national circumstances. So that it has been deemed as a very positive result of the synthesis report. It's also evident that the participation of non-party actors and other enablers, but also some broader range of actors within the society are becoming more involved and more engaged in the discussions while preparing the NDCs, and some elements on just transition also seems to be key drivers for implementing the NDCs, aspects such as job creation, or for example, training, education, and many other aspects of the just transition that are considered in this planning. In a nutshell, we could see that the full implementation of all these NDCs is estimated to lead to 3.6 emission reductions by 2030 relative to the 2019 levels. So just to remember that the levels as per science, you see in this diagram that we are using the scenarios provided by the IPCC is the recommendations by science is to reduce by 2030 at least 43% of the global emissions. So a 3.6% emission reduction by 3% relative to the 2019 levels is estimated, but the discussions also might include other elements to work on these estimates, because there are conditional NDCs or conditional elements in the NDCs, non-conditional elements. So we have to take these findings at the level of caution that is required. What is important is the call to rapid, deep, and sustained reductions in terms of GHG emissions by 43% by 2030 relative to the 2019 levels. So you see that we are not yet there. So there is a call to enhance ambition and to do it as quick as possible so that we can limit the temperature, as Walter was mentioning, far below 2 Celsius degree, but ideally near to the 1.5 to avoid, of course, the scenarios as proposed by the IPCC. So this covers the NDC section. Invite you to look at all the reports. There are some summaries and some diagrams that will help you to identify how to engage and what is the direction and how can we, in the next round, every 5 years, enhance the ambition that is required. Another very important tool under the Paris Agreement is, of course, the synthesis report. We have presented this at COP27, and the Paris Agreement states that all parties should strive to formulate and communicate their long-term strategies. And the Glasgow Pact, Glasgow 2021, COP26, and also the Sharm el-Sheikh implementation plan calls parties to have active submissions of long-term low development strategies towards the just transition to net zero emissions by or around 2050. So we saw that in this report, there were 53 reports available. So we urge to work on the remaining long-term strategies so that there is a clear path to transformation towards, again, the net zero emissions by mid-century. Important to recognize also as well that in the region, many countries have taken the lead. We could saw also some of the webinars before Sharm el-Sheikh, where some countries presented the long-term strategies, and our Regional Collaboration Center has also provided space to discuss and share the lessons learned. So I invite you also to look at these reports. Important to see also the expansion of agriculture action in this documentation. So the compilation and the synthesis show that there are important projections of emissions and removals by the sectors. So of course, there are some detailed elements also on costing and also on some of the complexities of the conditional actions, but I invite you to have a look. And the message here, because we don't have much time for this presentation, but the message is that still agriculture plays a very important role, of course, in these long-term strategies, development strategies, and that should be also a call for engagement of the key experts and users of the sector. 51% of these long-term strategies are described, as you could see, as the sector-level projections of emissions and removals under the long-term strategy synthesis report. There is this last note on this work, and this is important also to connect to the mitigation work program. It's a call to enhance ambitions, but also ensure effective implementation of the actions as detailing the NDCs and increase the ambition at the next round in 2025. But also is to linkage all of these with the Just Transition Work Program elements, key elements such as job creation, but many other elements should be featured in this discussion. And also we provide with a number of materials and tools, including the website that explains the decisions at Sharm el-Sheikh connected to both the Mitigation Work Program and the Just Transition Work Program. There are elements also that details on agriculture. I won't go into the details, but you can see that there are also technologies that are featured in the documentation, as well as subgroups. A very important one is the elements on cropland and fertilizer management. This has been also an area where a space for innovation has been open, and in the Global Innovation Hub, at the third part of my presentation, I will be providing some of the key findings of the dialogues that we have at COP27 in this regard. But this is again a call to get involved and to engage with the long-term strategy development process of your countries, and of course use this instrument also to accelerate transition. Moving to the second part of my presentation, this is the work under the cooperation towards implementation of the NDC under Article 6. The Article 6, in a nutshell, covers three main chapters. The first one is 6.2, or cooperative approaches, where there is bilateral or multilateral cooperation between countries, interested countries that voluntarily participate, and they involve mitigation outcomes that are transferred and produced through such cooperation. This is 6.2. There is the mechanism under 6.4. This is operated centrally by the UNFCCC under the supervisory body represented by parties, and this produce credit or emission reductions by public or private sector actors, and this will allow the international transfer of credits. So there is a level of voluntary participation in the carbon markets and the mechanism that are under the decisions, relevant decisions under Article 6.4. There is Article 6.8, but we won't be talking about this, but for your reference, the Article 6.8 is also relevant for non-market approaches. So there is a framework where some of the elements of even agriculture or forestry may be included that are part of these non-market approaches, such as collaboration, finance, and any other capacity building, for example, activity. These are activities or type of activities that are under decision. What is important in the developments of Article 6.4, the mechanism, is the work on removal. So this will contribute to the mitigation of green gas emissions, and it's also striving to sustainable development. So we won't go into the details, but the parties at Glasgow has requested the supervisory body of 6.4 to elaborate the modalities, rules, modalities, and procedures, and provide recommendations on removal activities. Maybe as a background, these are the types of removal activities that could, for example, include aspects relating to enhance carbon stocks through afforestation, reforestation, but also may include a broader range of removal through biosequestration, photosynthesis, land-based activities, including revegetation, including agroforestry, soil carbon sequestration in croplands. And there is a list that is provided in these materials that is under consideration of the supervisory body. There was a call for inputs until last 15th of March. So in the first round, more than 400 inputs were received, submissions, and then in the second period until 15th March, we expect to have really a large range of submissions. Even the submissions are already closed. You will see the synthesis report that will feed into the next meeting of the supervisory body. So this is a call to engage and to be part of this process that is webcasted. The next meeting will take place at the end of May, but I have the link provided here, and please feel free to look at these developments and get involved. There is also within removals a chapter on engineering carbon renewable technologies, the direct air capture and storage, but this note cover both the enhanced carbon stocks and the engineered carbon removal technologies. I'd like to move to some information that might be helpful. I will do it very quickly before we move to the Global Innovation Hub. But you know that recently the call for the climate weeks has been confirmed. We have 4 climate weeks, regional climate weeks in our radar. For you, maybe it might be really relevant to look into the dates of the Latin American and the Caribbean Climate Week that will be hosted by the government of Panama. So you have the links here, and the announcement of the call for side events and engagement will be done through the regional collaboration centers. So stay posted, and they will produce the newsletters, and the information will come to them. So this is only a quick call to engage with the regional collaboration centers, with an office in Panama for Latin America, with an office in St. George's for the Caribbean. And you see also the host partners that make these efforts possible. And in total, we have a network of 6 regional collaboration centers. So feel free to visit the link and engage with the regional lead, Fabiana for RCC Panama and Mayra for RCC St. George's. So that is an extended arm of operations of our secretariat. This is the last part of my presentation. I hope I'm doing fine with time, Katia, but I will try to be very succinct and maybe recognizing the work and the collaboration efforts with ICA. How much time do I have, Katia?
Muchas gracias, Carlos. Tal vez unos 3 minutos para...
Carlos, you have exactly 3 minutes, so you can just comment on the center. We're very interested in that.
So just wanted to flag that we have opened up these dialogues on transformative innovation at COP26. And COP27 was a really good opportunity to dig into some of the areas that are deemed to be the more transformative and the more impactful. And ICA was part of some of the side events and the dialogue. So I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. We produced a synthesis report of the outcomes of this session, but it was quite massive in terms of participation. You could see that we have more than 217 organizations, 400 speakers, and more than 48 countries represented, out of them 39 from Global South. In the main framework looks into how to enhance ambition and achieve effective implementation. So one of the issues and opportunities that we see here is that the long-term strategies that I mentioned before can be designed identifying what is needed as opposed to what is perceived as currently possible. So instead of looking into projections, thinking on available resources, technologies, and the sectors, assuming that they remain as they are, is looking into core human needs. So in that way, we will expand the space for innovation and create market signals to dig into what is needed as opposed to what is perceived as possible. This is a narrative that is new and that can be very impactful. So currently we are looking to a problem-oriented approach. So we have the sectors, we are trying to decarbonize the sectors. So this framework will allow us to first establish what is needed, and then based on that, backcast the possible scenarios to identify alternative disrupt supply chains. This is an example on the automotive industry. In this case, instead of looking to decarbonizing the carbon industry or the automotive industry to e-vehicles, is thinking, why do we need this? We need this for mobility. And if we move one level up, then we ask ourselves, what we want to access products, services, and then we have a broader range of human needs that can be satisfied, and in that way combine a series of solutions, and some of them new solutions under the innovation framework. So replacing combustion automotive pools are important, but they are not sufficient. So there is this space to think on different ways to look at core human needs. Shelter is another excellent example. Instead of looking to decarbonize the cement industry alone, we may open the space to understand what type of shelter we need, what is the demand, and how can we disrupt the supply chain with sustainable materials. So just to graphically show that we are opening the space to different enablers, opening the space to governments and cities and national governments to spell the demand in what is needed as opposed to what is currently possible, and bring different enablers, including the financiers, but broader range of collaborators on the policy, innovation for policy, innovation on finance, innovation collaboration, and bring them all together. So one concrete areas of work under the agriculture/forestry sectors that we discuss and identify in detail are on protein production, specifically the case of beans. Is not the only solution, but this was one of the case studies that was discussed at COP, but also for shelter, bamboo, and from access green hydrogen development, looking into a future with avoidance emissions that can also supply different sort of opportunities under the Just Transition Scheme, but also, for example, ammonia for agriculture. So stay tuned. This is just an invitation to visit our website and to learn more about the Global Innovation Hub, and a call also to look into the plans towards COP28. The website has been launched. The key actors are sending their key messages, what are the priority areas, and what is expected at COP28 through this announcement. So stay tuned. It's been a pleasure to join you. Please feel free to contact our RCCs for regional action, and the Global Innovation Hub remains at your disposal for exploring core human needs, but also understanding the space that we all together can create for transformative innovation. Thank you very much. Katia, over to you.
Muchas gracias a ti, más bien.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for sharing all of that information. We're truly motivated to see everything that is out there. And there are many opportunities where the majority of us could definitely find an opportunity to impact. So thank you for detailing the opportunities for this year and on the route to COP28. So again, thank you. So regarding the presentations and the materials, they will be available and we will share that with you. So let's continue with the program. We're nearing the end. I'm going to give the floor to our colleague, Ricardo Montero, from the Executive Secretariat of the Central American Agricultural Council, who has been involved in these issues for some years now. He works as a technical regional coordination of the CICAC, which is the Central American Agricultural Council. Ricardo? Thank you. Thank you so much, Katia, for the invitation, and Walter and Carlos for their presentations. It's truly hard to summarize as great as they did, or as well as they did. So I do share the Deputy Director's comments when he stated that agriculture is part of the solution. And Walter gave us a great look at the scenario of climate change and COP and the SAPSTA, and mentioning the different IPCC report, where once again emphasis is made on keeping emissions to 1.5 to try to reduce the nefarious impact on climate, on greater days of heat that will impact our agriculture. I liked how Walter mentioned the different schemes and how the ecosystem that is tied to agriculture is not coordinated well, and needs to acknowledge, and that we acknowledge the need to pay more attention to agriculture. There's the Adaptation Fund and the Global Green Fund, but they're not that easy to access. I think that ICA has been very innovative in emphasizing this. Their participation during COP27 was truly important. Also, know that since it was Hulk of the agriculture of the Americas and the entire world, truly, I love the fact that ICA is working stronger with regard to COP28. We did accompany this process successfully. We met with the Minister of Agriculture from the Central American region at COP27. And we'll continue to provide support for this effort during COP28 as well. The scientific focus that's given to agriculture is very important, with the high political backing, and tying the environment with agriculture is necessary to be able to use or take advantage of the opportunities that in a more effective manner. We have a new instrument, Sharm el Sheikh, that acknowledges progress since Cornebia, agriculture for food security, that needs to put this work into practice with a more holistic focus, intensifying the different processes involved and sharing information. Increasing cooperation appeals to other actors outside of the convention, which is important to consider, and we need to reinforce this as well on a regional level as well from our authorities there. We have a new target with regard to ambitious projects with the 4-year short window, but undoubtedly this is a key moment. So what is important in Bonn is important for us, agriculturally speaking, to be able to focus more on implementation. Would you mind, Carlos? Oh, Carlos mentioned NDCs and the carbon market on Article 6, emphasizing the topics on COP27 regarding loss and damage, and the new plan for agriculture and food security, which appeals to joining efforts. NDCs are important tools that we also have in the sector. We should increase participation in the agricultural sector to increase NDCs and implement them. I'm very happy to hear that the quality of the information has improved. Outside of state actors, we include NGOs, civil sector societies, civil sector organizations. So there's a need to reduce GDEs and mitigation, management, harvest management, cattle raising, food loss. All of these topics are attributes that we need to focus on in agriculture to attain the goals of the countries and be able to attain their NDCs. We also appeal in Latin America to climate in Panama on October 23rd to 27th. We'll be present there making a big effort and gathering the information that we need with headway already made in Bonn in June that we can convey to Dubai's COP28. So I invite you to take advantage of the Global Innovation Hub. It's very interesting to look at this focus based on solutions. So COP27 focus on specific topics of implementing concrete needs. And we'll begin on, if we think about agricultural being part of the solution, we invite anyone who would like to support us in this process to come ahead and join. Thank you so much, Ricardo, for your conclusions, for your perspectives and continuity guidelines. So we're now going to close and thank you all for attending this seminar. And we will give Federico Villarreal to please take the floor. He's the Director of Technical Cooperation at ICA. And he has been leading many of the different actions that ICA has been working on. And he's also working with other areas of our institute, as well as many of the key stakeholders that are connected today. So Federico, you have the floor. Thank you. Thank you, Katya. Let me begin with a word of thanks. I'd like to thank Walter for his excellent presentation, Carlos as well. Thank you, excellent. And Ricardo for that very difficult close and synthesizing very well the dense information that was communicated, and very interesting to note all of your observations. We'd like to thank the entire team of the Climate Action and Sustainable Agriculture team. Within the framework, I'd like to thank the partners of this event, SICAC, and the Center of Global Innovation of the Convention. If we want to garner great results, and I think that this is a great example of how we can do this. Before moving to some brief ideas, just an announcement that our next seminar will be held on April 28th. And we also hope to have you all connect that day. Now, Walter mentioned in his report that there will be more extreme climate events in the future, and with the rise with an increasing rise in how extreme these events are. So we need to work together on mitigation, because alone will be hard to resolve the issues. Now, we can't put food security at risk, because agriculture always has had an important role, and we can't compromise it as a result. At some point in time during the comments, I was asking myself, what's the role of regional organizations such as ICA within this scenario, this global process? Because it is a global crisis, and the solution should be a global solution. Countries cannot, as silos, unilaterally resolve their own issues. And I started thinking about possible solutions. Lloyd and Carlos and Walter, of course, mentioned that agriculture is part of the solution, and that cannot be forgotten. There's no doubt about it. And taking into account something else that was mentioned previously, we can't speak about agriculture without farmers, and decisions must be based on science. These are the three large items that need to be considered. So ICA can help with that. We were able to synthesize some of these issues with our exhibition hall. And agriculture, in a more abstract sense, involves all stakeholders. But our exhibition hall truly brought agriculture to the convention. It was able to make an impact with ministers of agriculture. There were farmer organizations that expressed their voice. There was representation from the private sector as well. we can't forget about the private sector because it also includes, they were also included. So definitely the key, and this is what ICA aspires to promote, we would like to convey the voice of our culture through the organizations that work with us and find a solution, a better adaptation, better mitigation, and be acknowledged as part of the solution, and essentially as part of food security. So for this purpose, the voice or the voices of agriculture is promoting that voice is one of the objectives of the convention, promoting the voice of agriculture in the Americas. So we will continue to endeavor in that aim here at ICA together with you for our voices to be heard and find at least an opportunity to be heard. So we're working relentlessly towards that end. The COP is in December, but results need to be, submitted early. So this is an example of that effort, and we hope to see you on April 28th at our next meeting. Have a great day. Thank you all of you, and have a wonderful day. Thank you for having me.
Recording stopped.
And we can only continue onwards. Thank you, everyone. Walter, Ricardo, Katia, everyone.